Hello. Beautiful to see you. Lovely to be here. Yes, there is machinery in the background, but the garden is fabulous. So I'm just going to show you anyway, and then we'll go inside. Look at this. Wow. And the sun has come out. I put in a request so that you could see the flowers. Just, I mean, wow, really. It's fabulous. And there's a breeze to move them around. This is pretty cool when this happens. Oh look, I need to pull the chickweed. I did a bit of a weed a little while ago, but I always miss some. And, you know, the thing with weeds is if you pull them out quickly, then they don't run to seed and you don't get more. So, in case you're wondering why I'm talking about manifestation and all I'm doing is showing you the flowers in my garden, it's because this is a Facebook Live. And it has to propagate around the internet, and my husband has to share it out. And so while I'm waiting for that, I'm showing you the garden because there's plenty to see. And I'll show you the man working over there as well. There's a house there that's been moved. It wasn't knocked down. And they're taking a lot of soil off the property and going to build, I would guess, infill housing there. So that's what's going on there. So now here's my spring, accompanied by a digger. We've still got this wonderful fuchsia that has flowered all winter long. And then look, the bluebells are just bluebelling. And so look at that huge bumblebee. Look at her. They're all females. Look at all the pollen she's got on her legs. Really, that's just gorgeous. Followed that bumblebee for a long time, and she's going to keep on going. So we have cineraria in the back, and the roses, and you look at the new foliage. I love it before it gets damaged, because it always does. And there are just bluebells and bluebells and bluebells and more fuchsia, because I like to have more than one of something. I like to have big piles of it, and then you just get lots. When it's coming, it comes, you know. So look at this, and then we've got Granny's bonnet here. This one is really big and beautiful, and it's just flowering all over the place. And these are the plants, the phylloxera that I put in, and the violets around them. And look, they're all green and looking like they've been there for a few weeks, which they have. And this thing that I pruned, see, it's starting. See these? These are new shoots. So this will be green and leafy very soon now. And all of this, these things not yet planted in here because there's still weeds. It's going to take me another year to get that ready for planting. But look at the magnolia. Isn't it fabulous? Just get up close and personal with just one of these flowers. Get you some focus on the back. So you can see inside. It's gorgeous out here. And so it may be noisy, but it's still beautiful. And I'm enjoying having all these purple flowers. And that massive fern up the back, it's so beautiful. So this is spring, and it'll be a building site next door for a little while. But it's interesting to watch. And welcome aboard if you have just joined, because I can see somebody's here. It's great to see you. Look at this. This is the highlight. This is like the fireworks display of my front garden, and it is totally happening. So we'll just get up here so you can see exactly how bright and beautiful these Spiraxis are. And then we're going to go inside, and I'll tell you what I've been writing about this morning, for God of me, because of course that's why I'm doing this. My name is Oneness Evolving, in case you're wondering. And once a week I carve out a morning and I write. And I have this dream, this mission, this vision, or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to get quieter in here now. And it's really to share information that has changed me and allowed me to change myself. And it's information that continues to change me, and I'm still learning. Man, am I learning right now. Because now I'm really writing about stuff that I don't know as well as the stuff that I wrote about before. And if you've watched some of these videos before, particularly recently, then you will know that I've been writing about atoms and protons and these weird things called Planck spherical units and the relationships in scale, where I got to. And I checked my number. It was weird. I wasn't checking my numbers, actually. I was in meditation, and I realized, oh my God, I got that calculation wrong by a factor of 10. So when we were saying last week that the Planck spherical unit, which is really, really, really small, so the size of a grain of sand, and by comparison, the size of a proton, you would have to get into a spaceship and fly from here to Alpha Centauri, and that would take you 4 years and 134 days at light speed, which of course you can't fly at light speed because if you fly at light speed, if you move at light speed, you stop being matter. You go back into energy. But pretending that you can fly at light speed, that's how long you'd have to travel, and it's a long, long, long way. 4 point something light years. It's a long way, right? And so compared to the Planck spherical unit, that's how big the proton is. And then I asked the scary question of, oh my God, if that's how big the proton is, how big is the atom? We're talking about a hydrogen atom too, which is not quite the smallest atom you have. Helium's smaller. And when I did the math, I had an extra zero, and I ended up thinking that the atom was about 8 times as big as the Milky Way, which blew my mind, quite literally. Because all of that's happening inside a hydrogen atom, and hydrogen atoms are really, 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 really small. So that freaked me out. And then I had this, I've got an extra zero in there. Okay, so what does that mean? What it means is that if the Planck spherical unit is the size of a grain of sand and the proton is from here to Alpha Centauri, it means that the atom is about 17% less across than the Milky Way. So instead of being 8 times the size of the Milky Way, it's about 80% of the Milky Way, about 83% of the Milky Way, actually. That's huge by comparison to the Planck spherical unit. I think if I had worked that out, I probably still would have had my mind blown. It's monstrous. All inside a hydrogen atom, a grain of sand from here to Alpha Centauri, and 83% of the way across the Milky Way. That's from an atom to a proton to a Planck spherical unit. It's insane, right? The point being that all of this is about the fact that this stuff we think is solid is not. It is 99.999999999% space. There's no matter there. Now, the whole point of explaining those massive scales is that if the proton is, if the Planck is tiny, right, and the proton is that big from here to Alpha Centauri, but then that proton in an atom is floating around in a space that's 83% the size of the Milky Way galaxy. Most of it's space. And there's a couple of electrons there which are next to nothing, right? So if we want to change matter with our mind, and I'm being very loose, when I say change matter, I mean effect a change in our life. Make something different from how it has been and make it something else. Have a goal, have an idea, have a dream, and achieve it. Okay? Matter being things that we think of as real, things that we see, things we can touch and taste and smell and sense with our skin and hear, all of that, that's matter. It's three-dimensional. It's what we understand. It's what we recognize. We have labels for it. If we want to change the matter, the experience of our lives, and yet the matter of our lives is mostly space, what the heck are we changing? Really? So I really, because I read through everything I wrote. I looked at it this morning and I thought, this is the point where I go through and I tidied this up and I fixed a few things and and then I thought, okay, now what am I writing about? And when I started writing this piece that I think I've more or less finished for the moment, I'm sure I'll come back to it. There's so much more to explain. it was like biting into, an apple with a really sort of thick skin, like a Granny Smith, which is really great inside, but the skin is quite thick and you got to bite into it, or cut into it or something. Well, that was biting into an apple. What I'm getting into now, it's not even like biting into the apple. I've got to find the apple in a dark room with, and it's kind of I've got to find the apple before I can bite into it. Because I realized that, if I say, what the heck are we actually changing? If we want to change the matter, the experience, the three-dimensional experience that we have of our lives with our mind, and that includes our bodies, how healthy we are, other people around us, and our jobs, and our money situation, and whether we have a love life or not, and all of that. If 99.99999% of all of that is actually empty space, then maybe we better talk about the empty space a bit, and maybe we better understand the empty space a bit, because maybe the empty space is actually where it's at, and the matter is kind of a side effect of something else that nobody's ever explained to us. And this is what I've been starting to understand in the last 5 years, 5.5, I don't know, I lose track now. And so I'm really curious about this, because for me, until relatively recently, when I started absorbing more information, I've been connecting with the unified field every day. Since the 9th of April 2019, I have not had a day when I did not make some effort to sit down or stand up and walk and connect with the unified field and do this thing where I create heart coherence and brain coherence that I have learned from Dr. Joe Dispenza, which has completely changed me and changed my life. So grateful. But all that time, and I think all the time in my whole life, but I didn't know I was asking the question, there's a part of me that's been saying, how the heck does this work? Really? And that part of me also utterly rejected, for some good reasons and some not so good reasons, this whole thing of you've got to focus with your mind and you've got to really work at it and try and push, and you've got to not allow any other thoughts in your mind if you decide you're going to do something. And all of that is true. But for me, it felt like this enormous degree of denial and forcefulness and a whole lot of stuff that I couldn't understand. And it was just, I couldn't. So I rejected all of that because it didn't make sense to me. And I couldn't get it with my heart. I couldn't grok it with my body. I couldn't feel it. It wasn't enough intellectual. It had to make sense to me. And so recently, because it was kind of like I had to really learn Joe Dispenza's model, and that took me about 5 years to really start to learn it and understand it. And then at some point there was like, I've been through this, and it's like, every time you go back and revisit that information, it's so rich. I would get more and more and more out of it, and I'd be putting all the pieces together. I was reading books, and it was just so awesome, and it still is. It's amazing, and the science that he and the team are doing, it's gorgeous, and I love it. And it's like, it's really sexy to me because it just adds more information, and I love this information. But there's still this part of me that says, how does this work? And when you read, as I did when I was much younger, you read the Bible and you just think that the stories of the miracles and, the saints or whatever it is that when they just had a moment and they just said, okay, let it be like this, or here's a little piece of bread and I'm just going to break bits off and feed 5,000 people. And you think, oh, well, whatever. That happened then, but it doesn't happen now. It's not really possible. Who knows what actually happened? What do you mean walking on water? What do you mean greater things will you do than I can do? What are you talking about? I can't see any of that. None of it's real. What the heck? And then I read some more books, and I mentioned this and only recently, because it was like my heart said, I want to read that book now, where I didn't before. And I've read about people doing exactly the same things, very ordinary people who are not all puffed up and stupid about anything, doing exactly the same things 150 years ago, about 100 years ago.
And I suddenly thought, oh my God, this is real. This is actually real. People really can walk on water. They really can make stuff out of thin air if they just know how. Apparently, there's a law. Apparently, there's a way to do that. And at the same time, I'm thinking, well, I know about going into the unified field, and I know I can change my emotions and my energy, and I know that if I do that, my body's going to respond. And it does. But there's this cry, this desire, this, I want to know. Okay, I can do it that way, and I'm doing it that way, and I love doing it that way, and I would never stop doing it that way because it works and I adore it. But if they did it then, and they did it 100 years ago or 150 years ago, can't I somehow work out how to do it now? So when I say that I'm curious about how can we actually deal with this manifestation question, I'm really, really interested in the science of it and whether it's practically possible. Because when you read about the masters, it didn't take them an hour. They would just see a thing that, for whatever reason, they decided was appropriate to do, and they would focus for a moment or two, and then it would be done. How did they do that? And what were they using? What were they using? And when you read what they say, and they say, well, there's this stuff that's all around us and through us, and it's inexhaustible, and you just got to know how to use it. And there's just a law. There's just there's a skill. And I keep thinking, how? How do you know? How do you do this? No one to teach me, but maybe I can learn anyway. Maybe the information is there in the unified field. Because in the unified field, all information, all frequency, all possibilities are all there. So hell, I wonder if I can learn if I ask enough questions. I wonder if I can find out. And so the unified field is the space, right? That's what's in the space, is everything that we can't see and hear and smell and taste and touch. I'm just checking the time. And so I've got this apple to bite into. And I don't actually think that there's an absence of information for me to explain things for you. Because I'm listening to that information. I am literally listening to a lecture that Nassim Haramein delivered in 2015. And I'm listening and thinking, oh my God, that's exactly what I wanted to know. Oh my God, I'm going to be writing about that. But I've only listened to it once. I haven't absorbed the information enough yet. And so here I am thinking, I want to talk about the space, and I'm just learning about it so I can tell you about it, because I'm learning about it so I can use this information myself. And I realized eventually, I need to go back to brainstorming. I need to write little bits and bullets and make a mess on my screen and just try and figure this out. Somewhere, some way to start, to get into that apple. And so there's lots of space. What's in it? This mess of facts and ideas and guesses that I've got to sort out and make into a story that's going to make some sense to you. But I realized as I started doing this that this is another step. This is another link in me being able to explain, at least in a way that's satisfying to me and hopefully makes sense to you and maybe is even useful to you, that the science is showing us how miracles work, and they're not miracles. It's just science we don't understand yet. And the masters, Jesus Christ, I call him Yeshua because I'm better with the Hebrew version of his name than I am with the sort of English version because of some experiences I had when I was younger. Yeshua, 2,000 years ago, he knew how to do this stuff. And then, 150 years ago, there was a bunch of people in sort of Nepal and Tibet and India, and they knew how to do it because these people from the States went over and they were researchers, and they went and spent 3 years with them, and they just, this is what you do. And they actually learned how to do it themselves, at least while they were with them. Some of them went home, and some of them actually came back and said, I want to learn how to do this, and they stayed there. And then another 50 years later, Paramahansa Yogananda, who was his name was Mukunda before his name got changed. And he was running around where he lived in Calcutta. God, I can't remember. I have to read the book again. And there were all these saints who were doing the same stuff And that it was reading that book which made me realize, oh my God, this is real. You just have to know how. And maybe there are people on the planet who know how, but can you imagine if you're someone like that, you probably don't want to go on YouTube and demonstrate, because then you'll have a queue halfway around the world of people who are seeking you out to say, oh, fix my problem. But it doesn't work like that. And that's part of what I know. There are things that I know intuitively and experience in my own journey, which I'm now getting closer to the point where I'll be able to explain to you my understanding of how they work. So the piece that I am going to say about how does this work and what is in the space that I'm rabbiting on about somewhat, well, with a lot of heart and a lot of experience, but not very much information yet. What is in that space? Okay, it's the unified field. I learned listening to this lecture. I've got a more scientific name, even more scientific name for the unified field now. And it's actually given me a little trouble because I know it's true, but it's almost like, oh, it's that. But anyway, because I heard Nassim say it. It's plasma, and I've heard that. Plasma is the fourth state of matter, right? You have solid, liquid, gas, plasma, right? And it's all just about, like if you have water and it's got very low energy, it's frozen, it's cold. If you warm it up, it melts. If you warm it up some more, it boils, it becomes a vapor, a gas. And then if you heat it some more and stop it from all just flying away, it will become a plasma. And the thing about plasma, as opposed to a gas, a couple of things that I remember because I did a little research about this. It's very, very electrically conductive. As in, some people say, well, it's like, you might as well consider that it's infinitely electrically conductive. Electricity goes through plasma. Lightning is a plasma filament, okay? It's electrically conductive. It's made of ions, generally equally charged, equal portions of positive and negative ions. That's a plasma. And it behaves like a fluid. Waves. It's not single particles. A plasma behaves like a fluid. It's like, it's a plasma. So if you're really, and I will explain this better because I've been learning more, but I'm just sort of gathering random facts and I'm kind of excited about it, but not very fluent explaining it yet. So you have this plasma, and the thing is, what's the plasma made of? It's not made of gas. It's made of those little Planck spherical units. And it's like, it's a fluid of Planck spherical units, and they're all spinning. Each one is spinning. And somehow or other they've all got charge. I don't understand how that piece fits in. But the information, and remember, well, maybe I haven't said this, all of those Planck spherical units are actually connected with little wormholes. And I'm not just spouting rubbish. This is actually true. Because each one of them, and again, I mean, there's theories, okay? But I feel the truth in what Nassim's teaching. So for me, because I'm not a physicist, I can say it's true for me. Each one is a tiny spinning little thing, and it's connected to all of the others. So, and it's like a pixel. The whole universe is pixelated. It's actually voxelated because each one's got a volume. And this is just like the pixels that make up the screen, except it's a three-dimensional thing, and it's the size of the universe, and it's made up of Plancks. And they're all spinning. And the only ones that we can perceive are the ones that have reduced their energy. They've lost enough energy that they've solidified first into the quite crystalline shape of a proton. And then the proton's lost more energy and it's slowed down and become matter. And that's what we notice. But everything else that hasn't slowed down enough to be matter is this vast universe-sized sea of Planck spherical units, plasma. And you know what the thing is about liquids? Have you ever heard of what cymatics is? You've probably seen it. You can do it several ways. You can have a big steel plate, for example, put sand on it. And if you rub that plate with something and make it resonate, depending on whether you do that fast or slow, the sand will form into patterns. if you take a speaker, a big speaker, and you put Glad wrap in, you turn it on its end so the speaker bit is pointing up, and you put Glad wrap in the speaker, and then you put a liquid in and you play music, that liquid will make patterns. It will form waves because the sound, the vibration, the frequency that's coming through it is pushing that liquid around. Well, plasma behaves like that. This plasma does anyway. It obeys the laws of fluid dynamics, which means interference patterns are possible. And you know what? Matter is hologram. This was a really hard thing for me to get my head around. You get a hologram when you have, it's an interference pattern. That's the most important thing I can say about a hologram, is that it's an interference pattern. You have a number of different lights, and the way they interfere gives you a shape that you recognize. It's three-dimensional. But the point about that I want to make, and I'll explain all of this better as I go along and I drill down and I start to put this together, because I'm really just learning this now. This is unknown for me. Is that the hologram, it's an interference pattern. When you have a fluid and you put a resonance through it, you create an interference pattern. When you have the fluid of the Planck plasma, that's the universe size, and you put your resonance through it, which you do in every moment of every day, you create an interference pattern, and that interference pattern is your life. And that's why this is important with regard to manifestation. It's that profound. Honestly, I'm sitting there and I'm remembering, because of course the unified field to me is a personality. And I'm sitting there sometimes just, and I'm moved to tears because I love it so much. And I don't mean I love it as the thing, I mean I love it as a relationship, as a place where everything is there. Everything I ever desire is in that place. And so it teaches me, and I'm learning. And so I'm sharing that journey with you. So thank you for sticking in here with me on this journey, because it's wild, and I don't know exactly where I'm going, but my heart knows, because I experienced this as real. And I'm just so grateful to Dr. Joe Dispenza, to Nassim Haramein, for giving me the information to put some structure around this so that I can share it with you. And so you can go, I wonder if that's true for yourself. This is just my greatest understanding of the truth for me, and all I can do is share that with you. And if you want to be curious, well, join me on Patreon. You can follow for free. You can support me if you wish. And there are definite bonuses for doing that. If you're on YouTube, thank you for joining in, for listening, for liking, sharing, subscribing. I just love being God of me with you. And that's what it's all about. I'll be back next week with more. Until then, be blessed. Bye-bye.